Parsha Teruma Mimer 1. Yitnech. This is the request of Knesset Yisrael to HaKadosh Baruch Hu during times of Golos. When the Beis HaMikdash was standing, the Yidden were called brothers to him, as it says, Laman Ache V'rei, and immediately afterward, Laman Beis Hashem Lekenu, meaning, when aren't they called brothers at the time when the Beis HaMikdash exists? Therefore now, in Golos, Knesset Yisrael says, Yitnech, if only it would be as before. We will understand this through the הכרובים that were in the Beis HaMikdash, concerning which it says, Ufneim ish el achiv. And it also says, the meaning of the הכרובים is understood from what Chazal say, Pnei kruv hainu pnei adam apid avrev apid zut yud gimel beis. The face of a man is a great form and a small form. For it says, the most come on Adam, yet he has no bodily form. Rather, so the explanation is that the Torah is called Adam, as it says, Zoi Satera Adam and Zoi Satera Adam. For our sages say, all the Torah is in the names of the Holy One, blessed be He, and in the Zayar, the Assessors are called Rosh Dishma Kadisha. This is like a person's name. Whether one is called Avram or Yaakov, the name does not touch the essence at all. A person's essence is his intellect and his character traits, which exist even when he is alone, whereas his name is only an external aspect through which he is called. So to above, even Chachma El Yin, and certainly the supernal attributes are no comparison at all to his essence and being, which is exalted and transcendent beyond the category of wisdom. The emergence of the 10 spheres is therefore called Rosh the Shema Kadisha, a mere radiance that does not touch the essence. It is written Havaya B'Chachma, meaning that the revelation of this radiance, the name Havaya says, Ani Havaya Hu Shemi, is within the level of Chachma. Through Chachma, the infinite light is drawn into all 9 spheres, as explained in Tanya, in Perek Lamed Hey in the Haggah. For this reason, Chachma is called Adam, for it is, and it's called Adam Harishin. In the Zayir, it's called Adam Kadma, for Rish is Chachma. This is like the flow of vitality from the soul into the body. The general life force of the soul is revealed in the brain. From there it extends to every limb according to its capacity, as explained in Tanya Perek Nun Aleph. So to above, the general revelation of the infinite light is drawn into Chachma, and through Chachma it extends into all the spheres. Therefore, as I said, the Chachma Nafkas is called Adam, the Ramach Mitzvah, to correspond to the Ramach Evarim, and the Shasa is that the Shasa sinews. And great is study that brings to action, for from the intellect the light flows into every limb. This is what Torah is called at Asab Miskash HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This level is called Apei Davrevei Adam Hagadol, for Chachmei Law is a manifestation of the infinite, as it says, V'Lisvanasi Ein Cheker, he is the knower and the knowledge. However, this is the Torah as it exists above. In order for there to be a drawing down from Chachmei Law into the Torah of Bria, Torah as we possess it, for Talmud B'Bria, there must be Tzimtzum. Thus, the sages say that the divine presence was constricted between the poles of the ark, for the voice that spoke to Moshe emerged from this contraction. This level is called Kruv Apei Zutri, the small form of Adam, like a child whose intellectual revelation is limited compared to an adult. This is Kruvecha Mikatem Mizeh, a downward extension from above to below to become the source and root of all of the light as it is drawn into Biyah. Opposite, this is the ascent from below to above. This occurs through the awakening from below in Krishma through Mesiris Nefesh Be'echad and the Yohavta through Shema Yisrael. One contemplates how Havaya is one and the violation he see, and that the world exists only because he said and it came into being, while before him all is as nothing. From this contemplation comes true self-nullification. Therefore, Knesset Yisrael is called Kala, from Kalei Nefesh, longing upward. This is the other Krov, rising from Biyah to be included in the infinite, to gaze upon the glory of the King. Through this, as water reflects his face, there is also a drawing down from above. Therefore it says, Krovim, 2 movements, ascent and descent. Min hakapayis tasu, as הכרובים, the kapayis represents Seviv Kol Amen, which encompasses both equally, for the infinite light transcends even Chachma, let alone the levels of the Krovim. It is written by your הכרובים, Persei Chanafayim L'mayla. The Zohar explains that 3 times a day they raise their wings. This refers to the 3 daily prayers. Through prayer, love and awe are aroused. These are called Kanafayim, wings, to which the soul ascends. This is the great light, Nehre Kadma, identified as Rav Chesed, love beyond intellect. When the Kruvim shelter the ark with their wings, they ascend to Atzilas, where and are then called Adam Hagadol. Prayer is thus a bond, an attachment, a joining of the soul with its root. Through this ascent, Pneim Ish El Achiv, they are united face to face, as at Matan Torah when it is said, Panim B'Panim Diber Hashem. Therefore they are called Achim, as it says, Laman Ache V'rei Adam Shalom, Shalom means union and connection. When the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed and the Kruvim were concealed, this revelation from Atzilus was withdrawn. Therefore, Knesset Yisrael cries out again, Yitnech ka'achli. Now the path is through Torah study. Our Chacham told us, since the Churban of the Beis HaMikdash, HaKadosh Baruch Hu only has the 4 Amas of Halacha. This is Yitnech Shdei Imei Teresh Bal Peh, which reveals his wisdom and will. One who grasps the Halacha grasps his wisdom itself. He is the knower and the knowledge, thus through Torah. The Yidden are again called brothers, drawing from the same source. The Torah is called milk, for just as a newborn grows through nursing, so the soul grows through Torah. Before entering this world, the soul is in a state of Iber within Malchus the Ima. Its descent into the body is called Leda. The Torah learned in this world is the milk that enlarges the Remach Ivarim of the soul, corresponding to the structure of the ninth fetus, and Tes, Pam, and Tes, 81, etc. Therefore, as Chacham told us, Asher Mishabalaka, unfortunate is the one who comes here with Talmud B'yadi, the learning in his hand. For through Torah study, the soul reaches a far greater level than at the moment of its birth, growing and becoming complete through this nourishment. To understand how it can apply above that the Holy One, blessed be He, should be like a brother who nurses Kavyachal from a person's engagement in Torah below, the explanation begins with what is written in Yisrael and also what it's written Achisi Rayasi, which means my sustenance. The Yidden sustain their Father in heaven because just as bread functions to bind the soul to the body, so too sustenance above means drawing a revelation of Ein Sof Baruch Hu into the spheres of Atzilus, which are called Gufen. Even Chachmei has no comparison at all to Ein Sof Baruch Hu, and the fact that he is drawn and enclosed within them happens specifically through Torah engagement below. This is the meaning of what is said, meaning that we draw him down into the form of kavin, that is the enclothing of the light into the 10 spheres, as they are divided into 3 lines, chesed, yamina, and so on, corresponding to them the 3 paths of Torah, avodah, gemilas, chasadim. In the future, all these drawn downs will be revealed, and therefore it says, but what is specifically stated is, which refers to Teresh Bal Peh. Teresh B'chsav is called Musar Avicha, while Teresh Bal Peh is called Teresh Imechel. As explained in the Maimer B'Yom Shmini Atzeres, in the written Torah, everything is only an illusion, just as a father contributes a drop, while the primary growth of the child is in the mother's womb. So, to the clear articulation of the detailed halachas in the Torah is in Teresh Bal Peh. This is because Teresh B'chsav emerges from Chacham, which is called Abba, while Teresh Bal Peh is Bina, which is called Ima. The primary revelation of the light from the intellect is in Bina, when the matter is understood thoroughly, as stated in the Zohar on the pasuk of Et Levihu, and in Eitz Chaim that the revelation of Atik is in Bina. See also Parashat Lech Lecha regarding Hey Avram and Parshvera on Lochinamar. This is the meaning of Da Atika. Therefore, it is specifically said because milk delights and pleasures the child. Through this revelation of divine, the light is drawn into Gan Eden, so that the soul enjoys the radiance, and Kodesh Baruch Hu comes to delight with the righteous in Gan Eden, all through engagement in Torah, as Chazal say, as explained at length in the Igeres HaKodesh beginning Eshes Chayil His Baila. The phrase refers to Bali Asakim, even though they cannot engage in Torah constantly and be in a state of Yenich Shteime through the Dal Ramas of Allah. It is nevertheless said about them as well, meaning they too can reach the level of Ka'achli, as will be explained. The idea is that we also find the term acquisition applied to the Holy One, blessed be He, as it is written, and Chazal say that 5 acquisitions the Holy One acquired. It is written, every Shabbos is called Yom Ashvi Shabbos Lahavaya. Seemingly, this is difficult because countless days have already passed since the creation of the world, so how can present day Shabbos be called the 7th day? Rather, the 6 days refers to the 6 supernal midas through which the worlds are brought into being. Yom Rishon corresponds to Chesed, and so on. On Shabbos, there is an ascent of all these midas back to their root and source above. This is likewise the pattern in every Shabbos. During the 6 days of action, there is the descent of the midas into Biyah to refine, and on Shabbos there is their ascent and the ascent of the worlds. This ascent occurs specifically through the 7th midah, which is Malchus. Period Chaim, Shad Aleph, chapter 7. That ascent must begin from below, like lifting a building from its base, whereby the whole rises, and also because an addition, this is the meaning of Shemayim related to Therefore, in Mein Sheva, blessing on Friday night, we say the ascents of the worlds on Shabbos and everything you find during the 6 weekdays rising and becoming included above are comparable to a transaction. The buyer first gives money to the seller and then acquires the object into his possession. Similarly, through the descent of the supernal midas through the 6 days to refine sparks, there's an ascent on Shabbos from to Shosei Yochid, his singular unity. This is the concept of divine acquisition. Likewise, the exiles of the Eden in Mitzrayim and Bavel function this way, elevating sparks that fell there, which are the souls of Rabbi Akiva, Reb Meir, Evadia, as explained in Parsha B'Shalach regarding Pari. This is also the meaning of Asaf Yitnech and Shema, a gathering into unity, into Echad, and V'yohavta. One engages in business to support himself and his household, which is a descent. But afterward, there is an ascent through prayer, fueled by that physical energy, declaring Echad and V'yohavta and Mesiras Nefesh in unity. Therefore, Tefillah is called Eilas Tamid. The constant elevation of sparks in all weekday prayers ascend through prayer of Shabbos. That is why it says in Tzach that even business people find him outside, because through their work the sparks are elevated into unity. All the Yidden fulfill this because Lacha rules that the first paragraph of Shema requires Kavana, and according to another opinion, at least the first pasuk requires Kavana. This is Mesiras Nefesh and Echad, which exists in every Yid. Even if one does not have actual Mesiras Nefesh, he has it potentially so much that even the Kal Sheb'Kalim can give his life. Through this, all one's dealings are elevated to Hashem Echad, making business itself parallel to him being called Ken Yishamayim V'Adet, and thus attaining the level of Ka'achli. See the explanation of Yashav Yaakov, Yeshiv Yaakov, and B'Kashtim Rishon. Moreover, specifically about them, it is said Eshakacha, referring to Nashik and the bonding of spirit with spirit through the prayers of the businessmen, which are in the mode of Askafia. The advantage of light from darkness arouses and draws from a very lofty place. This revelation occurs only through Nashik, and like a kiss that comes from such intense love, it cannot be expressed in speech, and therefore manifest through breath. The meaning of Ka'achli through Yenik Imi is that both nurse from one root, namely Torah, which is Chachma Abina, called Ima Abba V'Ima. But through Askafia and the nullification of ego and business people, the glory of the Holy One ascends higher, drawing light from the level of Ayin, the source of Torah, as it says, Ve'achachma me Ayin timatzei. This revelation extends into Zah, and thus they too are called Ka'achli, receiving from a higher root than Shdei Imi, namely Kaser, which is above Chachma and Bina. This is why Zevulun precedes Yisachar. It is written, Vayinashik Lavan Laban, of Lavan to his son. The tribes were also called sons of the supernal Lavan, because the Lavan Elion, because grandchildren are considered like children. So too, the level of Ka'achli applies through receiving from Ayin, the source of Chachma Bina. See similar discussions in Paradish Harachamishi, chapter 3, in the name of the Beis Yosef, and Malchus Nafik, and the explanation of Yeducha Achacha and Bnei Avicha. The phrase Enag and Hagacha Aviyacha al Beis Imi refers to Torah, because even the business people must set fixed times for Torah, though their main service is through action. Skafia and charity, the drawing down must follow the order of first being clothed in thought and speech, and only afterward in action. Thought and speech here means setting times for Torah. The main relation of Rishik comes through this. See Tanya chapter 45. Therefore, full-time Torah learners are described as Yenik Shtei, a constant state, because V'hegisa b'yem v'layla, whereas business people are described as Enagcha v'yacha al beis imi. Another explanation of Enagcha is that since their root is from above Chachma Bina, they draw from that higher level into Imi, and therefore it says Talamdeni, because from such a lofty place one can only be a recipient, as in Vidvarya Shasanti Beficha. The phrase Shakha Mai Yayin Hadekech explains that wine gladdens Elikim. Wine is Yenish Torah, which is Bina, Teresh Bapeh, since Elikim represents concealment and contraction, drawing from Bina, which is joy, reveals what was hidden and removes concealment. This is the meaning of a Shakacha Yayin. Wine that is mixed with fragrance, Yayin Hadekech, refers to scent, whose root is a very lofty, encompassing level. Food sustains the body, but scent lights the soul alone, because it is a form of supernal pleasure that cannot be grasped by vessels. This is the special advantage of setting times for Torah by a business person whose service is through a skafia greater even than that of tent dwellers, because their Torah is called Gayin Adekech, because fragrance comes specifically from something sharp and pungent. See the explanation of this wine, though a drink and thus an inner influence, also contains an encompassing quality. One who cannot learn or set times for Torah study, is still described as receiving me'asis rimeni based on the statement of Kepela Charima de Kosecha that even the empty ones among you are full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate. Empty does not mean sinners, heaven forbid, but those without Torah yet full of mitzvahs and proper conduct. Mitzvahs also arouse supernal delight, as there's no rich from Recha del B'shaychu, because the beginning is bound and the end. Therefore, it is called Asus Yimani, which revives the soul. This is why pomegranates were hung on a me'il, because the me'il represents me'il tzedakah, as explained on Seis Asus me'il tzedakah yateni. Mimer 2, Bir al Hanal. It is written, V'yamet kulum tzadikim. Yosef is called a tzadik elyon, and Binyamin is called a tzadik tachten. There are souls whose root is from Yosef, and there are souls whose root is from Binyamin, and therefore it is said, V'yamet kulum tzadikim. The meaning of Tzadik Elyon is that he connects Atzilus with Bria, as it says, Ki chol b'shamayim ba'aretz, meaning that he holds together both heaven and earth. Yaakov is called Bria Chatichin HaMavriach Men HaKatza El HaKatza, meaning that through him there is a drawing down from Ein Sof all the way to the source of Bria, which is the level of supernal speech. This drawing down is accomplished through Yaakov, who represents the totality of the supernal midas. Just as, by way of analogy, it is through midas that influence is expressed when there is love, one speaks. So to here, however, Elotil is Yankiv refers to Yosef, who is the quality of Yisay, the bond and attachment of the Mashpia to the Makabel. This is the level of Tzadik Elyon. But in order for the receiver to actually absorb and internalize the influence, the receiver himself must also be bound and connected. In Avodas Hashem, this is the quality of Mesiris Nefesh, and this is the level of Binyamin, the Tzadik Tachten, who binds Bria back up into Atzilus from below upward. This is why, regarding the birth of Binyamin, it says, Vatakash Belidta. Because Binyamin represents the opposite movement of birth and revelation from above downward, he represents nullification and inclusion from Bria into Atzilus. In practical mitzvahs, there are likewise these two qualities. There are mitzvahs that draw light from above downward, such as Shefer Lulav, Sukkot, Tzitzis, and Tefillin, and there are mitzvahs that are primarily elevations from below upward, such as Karbanis, Neishis Agais. This is what is meant by V'rav Shalom B'noyich. Peace means connection and bonding between Mashpia and Makabel. There are two forms of peace. Peace from above downward through Yosef, and peace from below upward through Binyamin. The peace that comes through Yosef is called V'rav Shalom, an abundance of peace. This is also the meaning of Keruvecha Mikatza Mizeh, which corresponds to Yosef, who draws down from Ein Sof to the level of speech. This is why it is said of Yosef, Hunar, because he is the quality of Keruv, Kedavia, as explained in the Zer. And the other Keruvecha Mikatza Mizeh response to Binyamin represents the binding of the Makabel from below upward, and Ufneim Mishal Achiv refers to the complete bonding and union of these two movements after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. Knesset Yisrael asks me, meaning at the level of brothers that existed when the הכרובים were revealed is now lacking. This is achieved now through Yenik Shteimei, through involvement in Teresh Ba'Peh, as explained earlier. This specifically applies to souls whose root is from Yosef, the Tzadik Elyon, who are called brothers to the omnipresent. However, this drawing down primarily affects the inner dimensions of the worlds because its main vehicles, thought and speech through Torah, in order for the influence to extend also into the outer dimensions of the worlds. It is said, this refers to souls rooted in Binyamin, whose main occupation is action, through which the light is drawn even into this lowly physical world. That's explained in Igeres HaKodesh. The meaning of Ashkecha is the level of kisses, is just as physical kisses arise from an inner love that cannot be contained within speech, because speech is a vessel and this love is too intense. So to this drawing down that comes through the fulfillment of mitzvahs ma'asiyos by souls of Binyamin draw from the level of akudim, which is higher than the level of structured vessels. In Atzilus, vessels exist, though but in akudim the lights are beyond vesselization altogether. This happens because through the elevations accomplished by Binyamin, through the refinement of Tayu, where lights were also beyond vessels, but resulted in Shvira, one draws from Akudim without Shvira. This is the level of kisses, a revelation beyond speech, as explained elsewhere regarding Va'atem Tachadushin at Kriyas Yamsov. This is why it says then, and here the drawing down originates higher than Ima Ilah, and only afterward is it clothed in Ima. This is different than Yenik Shtimi, where the nurture is directly from Ima. Therefore it says Telam Deini, indicating that such a lofty source one can only be a receiver. That from such a lofty source one can only be a receiver. As in the meaning of Yayin HaRekach is mentioned in the Gemara regarding Tleis Narida Afaris Meina Dachya, which alludes to the flow from the 13 attributes of mercy emerging from the Meichan of Atik. Ordinary oil corresponds to Chachma, but balsam oil, which has fragrance, points to Chachma of Keser beyond vessels. Similarly, ordinary wine corresponds to Bina, but Yain HaRekach, which has fragrance, refers to the revelation of the light within Bina from Atik. This is drawn specifically through the Aveda of Eskafia, of Kvis Itim Lateda, by those engaged in business, as explained above. Mimer 3. Koikedushas Admo Nishmas Yedin. Biur L'Inyan Hakrovim. This explains the idea of the Kruvim. When the Nukva, which is Knesset Yisrael, stands face to face with Zah, equal in their stature, and she also receives the Meichen of Abba Ve'ima, with one Keser shared by both of them, then they are called brothers. This state existed through the receiving of the Torah, which comes from Chachma and Bina in a state of Panim B'Panim. In Atzilus, they are called Adam HaGodel and Ad Peid Avreve, because the Eid in Seif is clothed even within the Kelim, and therefore Yuvagam Echad, through the Mishkan and the Beit HaMikdash, where he compressed his Shechina between the staves of the Aron in Asiya. This level of Zah and Nukva is called An Pei Zutre in the Gemara, and these are the Kruvim. Since the world of Asiya ascends to Atzilus 3 times every day, the Kruvim therefore have wings spread upward in order to fly up to Atzilus. It is known that Zah is the ultimate descent of our insight from above downward, in order that afterward it can shine into Biyah through the Nukva, who is Ima Tata, which is the source of Biyah within Atzilus. Because of this, it is written Kurvacham Mikatim Izeh, meaning the extremity of our insight as it is in Zah, and Kurvacham Mikatim Izeh, meaning the source of Biyah and their root within Atzilus. Into them as well are insight clothed through the Meichen of Abba Ve'ima, which are given into the head of the Nukva through Zah, her husband, only by way of passing through, and not by way of full hislapshus, as in the case when she is not equal in stature with him, but only from the chest and below, as it is known. The Kruvim are made of one solid piece with the kapetis, which is the level of keser for both of them, and also serves as a makif over the luchos that are in the Aron. The luchos are the level of Yisei Abba that were clothed in Asiya during the time of the Mishkan and the Beit HaMikdash. When the Kruvim ascend, they also elevate the kapetis and the luchos to Atzilus. Therefore, it is written in Sechichem B'chanfeim al HaKapetis, meaning that the kapetis ascends together with them. After the destruction, Zah and Nukva of Atzilus withdrew back to their place and no longer returned to be clothed in physical Asiya, not even in the second Beit HaMikdash, because the Kruvim were hidden away. Rather, this connection remained only within the inner dimension of the world through the involvement in Torah of the Tanoim during the period of the second Beit HaMikdash, and afterwards, specifically through halachos, which is the Pnimius Ratzon Elyon, something not revealed within Chachmei Law, which is Torah Shebuchsav. This is known for what is written Eish Chayil Ateres Baila. Parshas Teruma Summary. Maimer 1 explains the meaning of Yitnech Ka'achli as the cry of Knesset Yisrael and Galus. When the Beit HaMikdash stood, Yisrael were called Achim to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because there was a direct face-to-face connection, Panim B'Panim, between Knesset Yisrael and Zah, just as by the Kruvim, whose Pneim Ish Alachav, Torah is called Adam because it is the revealed structure of the divine name, not the essence, but the way the essence is made knowable. In its source, Torah is called Adam HaGadol, but in order to descend into Torah Shebebriya, it must undergo its symptom becoming Apei Zutre. This descent happens through mysterious Nebuch and Krishma, which raises the soul upward, and in response draws divine vision downward. When both movements meet, the Kruvim stand face to face. After the Churban, this state no longer exists in physical space, and therefore the request is fulfilled now only through Torah, especially Torah Shabbat Peh, called Yenik Shteime, which nurtures and grows the soul far beyond its original source. Maimer 2 clarifies V'amech Kol Tzadikim refers to two types of Tzadik Elyon, Tzadik Tachten, corresponding to Yosef and Binyamin. Yosef represents the flow from above to below, drawing Leki from Atzilus into Bria, while Binyamin represents the return flow from below to above through Mesiras Nefesh and Maisa. Both are required for true Shalom, which means connection between Mashpia and Makabel. Torah primarily draws light into the Pnimius of the worlds, but in order for the light to reach the Chitzonius, this physical world, there must be Emtzach Halachot, accomplished through the deepest attachment called Neshikin, comes specifically from this upward work of Bira, which draws from a level higher than speech and even higher than structured Kalim. This is why the Avodah of Bali Asakim, when done with Iskafia and Kriyas Itim, Torah can reach a higher root than those constantly immersed in learning. Maimer 3 focuses directly on the nature of the Kruvim. When the Knesset Yisrael stands equal to Zah and receives Meichen de Abba Ve'ima with one shared kesser, they are called Achim. And Atzilus, the state, is Adam HaGadol, where Iyuvegam Echad, through the Mishkan and Beit HaMikdash, this unity was compressed into the physical world, forming Apizut, the Kruvim themselves. Because the Siyah ascends to Atzilus 3 times daily, the Kruvim have wings symbolizing ascent through Tefillah. The Kruvim are one piece with the Kaperis, which is kesser, a kesser and makaf over the luchas, meaning that when they ascend, the kaperis and luchas ascend with them. After the churban, this ascent no longer occurs in a physical space, but continues inwardly through halacha, which is the Pnimius Ratzon Elyon. This is the enduring form of the Teruma, raising the divine presence through Torah when physical revelation is no longer possible.